Good morning. It's Monday, August 12th, 2024, 9 a.m. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
I'll move.
A motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Kurt. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Item 3 is items of Planning and Zoning Administrator Eric Furness. 3A is discussion and possible action to waive the requirement for 3 readings and to approve ordinance 08-12-2401 rezoning certain real property in Montpelier Township from C1 commercial to R2 residential.
If you'll recall, this is that property in Montpelier that has a residential structure on it that they found had been zoned commercial. We had a public hearing on it last week. The closing date is ready to go. They just need to get this done, and so the buyer is waiting to move in and is a school teacher, and so they requested that we approve it on a second and final reading. There was no controversy, no real issues with it.
You've had no communication from anyone?
So they made the request, and that's why the way we put it on the agenda. Obviously, it's your full discretion to do that or not, so.
We have done that in the past, items where.
Yeah, I'll so move.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Nathan and I have a second by Scott. Any further discussion? This is a roll call vote. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item B is discussion of possible action to accept a proposal for construction observation and testing services with Terracon for the Muscatine County Courthouse roof project.
So a week or so ago, I think Mike briefed you on it. I might have added a few more details. As part of the overall roof deck examination, once we found that the original slate roof is still there, Renaissance had some concerns, and because that raised wood decking that had been placed over the concrete roof deck has been there a long time. Visually, what we've seen so far looks really good, but just for some good assurances, we decided to engage a testing company. In this case, Mike recommended Terracon to do some anchor testing of the existing anchor bolts that are holding that wood deck down into the concrete deck service. Renaissance was the one that they wanted to be 100% sure that that deck was good. So this is a proposal from Terracon to do those services. This is an estimated amount based on about 6 hours of their guys' time. They're testing equipment. Mike and I think it'd be a good idea for you to authorize me to authorize some additional testing if we need it while they're here on site. We don't know, we want to establish an anchoring pattern, so we're going to expose enough of the wooden battens in an area that we can see, okay, they're every 3 feet, they're every 4 feet, whatever they are, test the break strength and pull out strength of a couple of them. But if we start seeing something that we're not quite sure we can establish a good pattern, we would have Renaissance open up a little bit more of the surface and test in a couple different locations while Terracon is on site. So it's Mike and I's recommendation that you authorize me. You know, Mike thought around 3,000. 1270 is their estimate. I don't think it's going to require much more than that, but while they're here, it would definitely be more economical than having them have to return, because we're like, we need to test a few more locations. So that's kind of what we're thinking, up to, maybe up to 3,000 while they're here.
Yeah, I think we had done this on a prior project, Eric, because again, mobilization is a big piece of this
It
cost.
is.
Do you really think is 3 good enough? Should we consider something like 5? Just at Eric's discretion. I mean, I trust Eric is gonna watch it and do and I just would hate to have to pay to have him delay another week, come back another week, because that'll just add cost to the whole.
I mean, you can do what you want. You had authorized me to approve change orders up to $7,500 if delay to bring the change orders in front of you would cost significant project delay or increased expense. Since this isn't typically a change order, we wanted to put it on the agenda to approve this proposal. 3,000 is, more than double of what their estimate is, but, if you want to do 5, I'm still hoping it's close to that 1,270 that we can establish, but if not, we're going to have them do a couple more, because at the end of the day, we want to be comfortable with that roof deck system that's there, and it would just be cheaper while they're on site than having to mobilize again. So whatever you want to do.
You feel like, you and Mike feel 3 is adequate?
Mike recommended around 3,500. If we can't establish, if we're not comfortable basically in doubling what our engineer is recommending, and and what Terracon's proposal is, I think then we're probably back to the drawing board on that roof decks, that wood deck system. So, 3,500 would,
I'm fine with 3,500.
I don't think it's gonna get to that, because from what we've seen, things look really solid. They don't look like they've had water exposure, the lumber looks good, the actual battens that we've seen. But just worst case scenario, so I'm not having to come back in front of you and mobilize Terracon again. So,
Okay.
So I'd make a motion to accept the proposal and authorize Eric to go up to 3,500 on his own discretion.
Okay, motion by Nathan,
I'll second.
second by Scott. Any further discussion?
you got a question? Okay. Just give you a little update. We did get the proposed change order for the tuck pointing and masonry work and some joint sealing. We're looking at some other options after we got that. It was very expensive, and so we've brought in another mason to give us a direct quote to do that work as opposed to, so we're working through some details of comparing the numbers that Renaissance and their mason gave us for that change order. So there'll be more information coming to you on that, but it was rather significant. And Mike Mike was down to kind of really evaluate what they thought needed to be re-tuck pointed, resealed too, and maybe narrow the scope down of that, because we were talking a couple $100,000 is what their initial recommendation was. And so we brought in a different mason to give us a quote. So, just FYI on that. I think that's the only update
Do
I
we
have.
actually take the vote?
No, we didn't vote on that. So we have a motion and a second on Nathan's, proposal. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. And then, so when will we have the other mason has reviewed it yet or not yet?
The other mason came down when Mike was here last week, and they went up on the roof and looked at so he's putting together a proposal too. And Mike took more time to look at it to really think, does that need re-tuck pointed? Do those capstones need reset? Really just kind of a second review of what Renaissance and their mason is recommending, and have our own price on that as well, so.
Okay.
And then on the jail project, we did have the pre-construction meeting last week. They're ready to mobilize, but they're still having a hard time with products. The insulated steel panels, there's been a delay in getting all their product. So they feel like we're getting pretty close, because they're coming out on, I think it was a 12 to 20 week estimated delivery time when they ordered the product, and they're coming up on that 20. But they don't quite have all the materials yet, but they're gonna go ahead and we've gotta move a gas line that goes up the side of the building, extend it out, so the panel's gonna go in, we're gonna get that done ahead of time. But hopefully that'll be commencing here in the next couple weeks.
Do they have any of the materials here, or?
They haven't started stocking any of the materials on site yet, because some of them, they don't have a definitive date to take possession of them yet. And they wanna just start bringing everything at once when they
Yeah.
get it. But they talked about, there's some work they could do, and that, like moving the gas line, but they don't wanna get started if they don't have all the actual trim and lip pieces for the actual panels, but hopefully we're getting close, so. That's the only update I have on the jail project.
Thank you, Eric. Anything else for Eric this morning? Okay, items with County Engineer Brian Horowski. Item A is discussion of possible action to approve contract bond and certificate of insurance for the bridge project on 120th Street. How's that? I'm just gonna stop at that.
Good enough for me. Morning. Yes, so this is our locally let bridge. The low bid was Jim Schroeder Construction of Bellevue, Iowa. We've received all the contract documents. They all look good and in order, so I would recommend to approve.
I will move.
I have a motion by Danny,
Second.
second by Kurt. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Utility permits this morning.
Yes, we have two this morning. The first is from Lumen, also known as CenturyLink of West Des Moines, Iowa. Lumen is requesting to replace an existing pole with a new pole for overhead telecommunication line on Hudal Junction. That one's pretty straightforward. The second is from Eastern Iowa Light and Power of Wilton, Iowa. They're requesting to bore an electric power line underneath Zachary Ave at 1819 to eliminate the existing overhead line. So, also pretty straightforward.
I'd move to approve.
I have a motion by Scott,
Second.
second by Nathan. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Anything else, Brian?
I want to give a bit of a projects update. Our North Isaac Bridge, it is opened up to traffic. It's not quite complete. They have to do some fencing, just to replace the farm fence that was out there. So they're hoping to get that this week or next week. Hopefully the weather straightens out for them. But we're glad to have that project mostly complete. Our Moscow Road paving project, the contractor that is slip lining the existing culverts, they're out there working on that. They got quite a few of them slip lined, and this week they should be working on grouting them. So basically the space in between the slip line and the existing pipe gets filled with a grout material. So our seal coat, that's LL Pelling. They're planning to come in this week. I haven't heard an update yet, but I do know that we're pretty much next on their list. So once the weather straightens out for them, I'm sure they'll be here. Our Vale Ave patching project, that's with Cedar Falls. They have about 50% of that complete. Our Trolley Ave bridge, that's a Bros Bridge. We have a pre-con scheduled for next week. I know that IBC, that's Iowa Bridge and Culvert, there's a good chance they want to come in yet this fall and start that. So again, if the weather stays the way it was and dry, I would say it probably stands a pretty good chance for them to come in. And then the contract that was signed today for the 120th Street Bridge with Schroeder Construction, they did tell us that there is a chance they might squeeze it in yet this year. So we got the potential for a pretty busy fall coming up. But that's all I got.
Anything else?
Good
How about
questions.
levy project? Did they have a meeting last week? or-
They did. I was unable to attend. I was down there this morning. It did not look like they were hauling. I know that they weren't hauling Friday either, so I am not 100% sure what they're up to. But I know that the feature down in Louisa County was kind of hitting a critical state where they were doing that hydroturf. I believe that was somewhat getting, I don't want to say near completion, but getting to the point to where they're hydrating it, and that was a pretty big task. They lay this powder down and then they hydrate it with water, and it more or less turns into concrete. So I don't know if that's where their focus has been, but like I said, they weren't down there today or Friday. So.
Okay. Thanks, Brad.
Yep. Thank you.
Item number 5 is discussion possible action to approve the minutes of the August 5th, 2024 regular meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion by Nathan,
Second.
second by Kurt. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Correspondence, Scott?
I guess the Farm Bureau meeting would probably fall into that. On Tuesday the 6th, attended the Farm Bureau meeting, and that's about it.
Okay, Nathan?
Same Farm Bureau meeting on the 6th.
I had, and I think I shared with you, the response to the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region's request for funding from the HHS, and the HHS basically sent a letter back saying they didn't have authorized. I read it as they're not authorized based on the code to make that, because it didn't meet the criteria. So we'll see where that goes. They've asked for further information, so I don't think it's a no, but it's a hoops to jump through. I also attended the Farm Bureau meeting. And then I was gonna talk a little bit with you, Brian. I had a gentleman stop by and said that the road condition on Bayfield, somewhere between Mulberry and Ice, I couldn't really write it down. And I drove it, quite frankly, and I'm gonna think I'm gonna call him back, say, he might wanna check his car. Cause it seemed like, I didn't see any issues there, do you? Have you been on, I mean, you guys aren't, yeah, I drove it.
Yeah, I'm on there all the time.
I drove it and I didn't see anything, so I'll have to call him. Say, I don't know what's going on. All right.
So a while back, I had
landfill commission meeting, and we had talked about getting a new 28E and a new contract in place. Carol Webb, with the administrator from the city, is leaving here in a week or so. And so I asked her if she was working on it. So I asked her where it was at, because I didn't want it to get lost in the shuffle. I engaged the mayor on that too, Brad Bark, and Friday she got the new 2080 agreement and the new contract to me, and I forwarded it to you guys and Mr. Barry. And he sent an email to Carol this morning asking for some other information so he can move forward with whatever we need to do on that. So that's the only correspondence that I thought was worth noting. I did attend that Farm Bureau dinner also.
I had a message call on the bridge on 245th Street.
Okay. Committee reports, Kurt, did you have any committees?
Yeah, Friday the 9th, I had a We Lead board meeting.
I didn't have any last week.
I had none. Nathan?
I know.
And Scott?
I had none.
All right, items with the administration office. Kayla, did you have anything this morning? Okay. Item 9 is to receive comments from county employees. Any county employee that wishes to address the board?
Morning.
Good morning, Jim.
Couple of things. Apologize for my tardiness, but I had a hearing at 9, so. A while back, actually a couple of years ago, we did a petition for disposition where the county sued an individual from whom we had collected about 50-some animals that were in distress or neglect situation, and we ended up getting a judgment against her for just shy of $7,000 to pay the costs associated with veterinary services, Humane Society, attorney's fees, court costs, all of that was about $6,855. We were able to collect on that judgment. I filed a lien under the Iowa Code 717B, which allows you to lien against real estate. She owned a home up in Black Hawk County. And so I went through the auditor's office and filed a lien against the real estate, and it went to tax sale, and they paid it, and the county's now been paid. So I need to file a release and satisfaction of judgment in the civil case, as well as note in the criminal case that the restitution's been paid to the county. I've got a release of judgment that I've prepared. I was gonna have Nancy sign it with the board's approval and then have Kayla and I witness it so that we get it taken care of, but if you prefer, Jeff, I can put your name on it and we can get that executed here this morning if that's what you wanna do.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when Nancy will be back, so I think it might be the best
Okay.
case, so we don't hold that up. We'll just,
It won't take me a couple of minutes to get
and
ready.
that's fine, Jim. If I need to come back at some time today or hang around, I can do that. Not a
Okay.
problem. I'm not in a hurry. Okay.
Secondly, I was notified earlier this year, maybe February, late January, February, reference an agreement that had been entered into with, for the county jail, with Control Systems Specialist. They were a company that provided monitoring and sort of oversight of the heating, cooling, and ventilation system in the jail. And they had signed an agreement with the county at some point in the past wherein the county paid a fee for the year, and that was actually paid in advance. So the bill came in last December. It was approved and paid in January. We then got notice that there was problems with the company. So I reached out to the owner of the company and was able to secure a repayment of the $13,000. That's the good news. The bad news is that he subsequently filed for bankruptcy, and so this would be a preferential debt that the trustee could claw back into the bankruptcy because it was a debt paid by the county that was repaid by the debtor within 90 days of filing the bankruptcy and wouldn't otherwise meet any of the bankruptcy exclusions relative to keeping it from being clawed back. So anyway, I had been in contact with the trustee probably about a month ago. She sent me some cases to review, not that I work exclusively or really at all in the bankruptcy world, which I reviewed, then reached out and made contact with an Abram Carls out of Cedar Rapids that was referred to me by Amy Reesner at Dallas Lynch, just to send him the information, make sure that my assessment of the situation was such that we're probably looking at repaying it, so having to repay it. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on that. I'm going to reach back out to the trustee and see if there's a way to negotiate any of it at all, and see what we can do. But I wanted you to be aware that although our effort was successful earlier, that probably will get unrung. And then obviously there's a new entity that's providing the services to the jail at this particular point in time, which the board has already approved. And so as I indicated to Nancy previously, the prepayment of any type services is always very problematic. Because once they have your money, unless you have a specialized agreement that allows them to hold it in trust for you, and makes it clear, anybody that files bankruptcy, we can end up in this situation. And so it's just not a good position to be in if we can avoid it. So that's not a criticism, that's just for everybody's knowledge and understanding on the board. It's important that we make sure that we pay for things as we get them, not really pay in advance for things that we might get and should get, probably will get, but inevitably things happen. So with that understanding, I'll see what I can do with the trustee. I did, the fees that I'll have to pay to Mr. Carls will be paid out of fine collection, just as I've done in the past, anytime I've secured services from outside counsel that specializes in things, so that it's being paid from a source that is really associated with the county attorney's office.
So, Jim, that's an interesting, I wasn't aware that could happen, so as I think about some of our other contracts, like, I think, I don't know if we still do, but at one time, we had a service contract for like HVAC maintenance and stuff like that I think you probably have a prepay, so what would you do, like a monthly stipend on something like that?
Right,
So you'd say-
yeah, I would bill it as the services go, is what I would do. We've got a similar issue with the jail in terms of the cost pool of monies that's used by the jail to pay for medical services that are not otherwise paid for. We've got a same issue that we're working through with the provider on at this time, so we have a better handle on that and an understanding. They sort of monitor the account, so they need it, but we're going to need to include some language that provides how that account is to be monitored and who it belongs to, just on the off chance we had a
I
problem.
feel like we might have some of those types of contracts also with some of our IT services, licenses, and that sort of thing. I can't remember exactly. Do you think it's worthwhile at this point to conduct a review of our contracts to see if this kind of pitfall exists? And if they're, to the extent that it's warranted, maybe this bankruptcy council could provide some language to kind of close that barn door in all our future contracts.
It probably wouldn't hurt,
Yeah.
I don't know the extent to which it, the ones,
Sure.
the ones that I've been involved in, as with the jail most recently, I've called it out and said, listen, we need to be very careful about this for the obvious reasons that we just talked about. So, I don't have a particular I couldn't tell you how many contracts are out there, because a lot of them I've never laid my hands on or looked at.
I bet you there's a good number. I was just thinking about all the Tyler systems.
Yep.
You have annual maintenance agreements and software. That's a very common practice. And I wonder how you deal with that.
Well, to me, we can still do it. It's not that it's inappropriate to do. The question
Make
is,
sure
what
you
do we
have the
do to make sure that
language so it's
we have
not-
it protected in the bankruptcy arena from somebody that would go under at mid-year or whatever the time frame might be, and then we're left with our money being in their hands and receive nothing for it. So it's not, I know it's been a practice, and I'm sure it's been a practice in a lot of places. It's just one of those things that typically the people we deal with don't go bankrupt, but occasionally they're going to. So that's just the nature of the beast.
I can tell you my personal work, just anecdotally, I've seen trustees getting a lot more aggressive about those types of clawbacks. So I think we're headed more in that direction than away from it.
Well, that's how they get paid.
Yeah, absolutely. More money they get, more
They're
money they get.
incentivized to get after it
Yeah.
because their fees come out of that, what they collect. So they're a bit motivated. They're a trustee, which would imply they're independent, but I don't know that I would call them exactly independent.
Well, they're a trustee for the creditors, not for the debtors.
So, anyway, that's what I can share with you there. Also, I saw, I don't know whether you dealt with the Terracon up on the roof, you did deal with that? Okay, that was the only other thing I had on my.
Yeah, we authorized, we approved the recommendation, and we authorized Eric up to 3,500 in case that it appeared that we might not get a full answer from the initial, so.
Yeah, I'm familiar with previous employment with their terms and conditions. There's some things in there that I always changed, just as a matter of course, because their conditions are such that they limit themselves to, their liabilities limited to the amount you pay them. So if you want more liability, or you want more exposure for their liability, you need to ask that question. They also don't allow you to share that with any third party, and obviously in this particular case, we'd be sharing it with a third party, and so we need to make sure that we had a clear understanding of that. They typically own all that information. You know, why in this case they'd want to own the results of the investigation they were done, I wouldn't know, but those are three of the things that I normally would clarify. And from an insurance standpoint, they have workers' comp, general liability, et cetera, but they don't necessarily list us as additional insureds. So if they're hurt in any of the covered policies, then we aren't listed as I would prefer we normally be listed as such.
Would you advise us to reconsider the vote?
Well, I don't know that it's worth that. I apologize for not getting here
Oh, no.
earlier. I just got jammed this morning, so, but I don't know that it's worth going back. Again, it's just for knowledge and understanding those service agreements. Anytime you deal with a professional like that are almost always limited in exposure, and ownership and use, because they don't want to be responsible to anybody else without you coming to them and asking them and getting authority. So in this case, if we want to allow Mike to rely on that, or Renaissance to rely on that information, you know, they need to understand we have to share it with other people that are going to use it for making determinations that are relevant to the decision we make about the roof.
I think that's, on this one, that seems to me is a pretty important point.
Well,
because
yeah, I mean,
that is the sole reason for this. So I wonder if we should maybe ask that we,
In this one, we wouldn't be sharing that information necessarily with Renaissance, it would be for us, I mean, with Mike and our engineer, it would be for our comfort, whether we believe.
Well, Mike's a third party. I can't remember what it said.
and
He's the one that engaged them on our behalf, him and the engineer.
But it's still with us, the contract's
Yeah.
directly with us, so,
Let me pull it
and you're
back.
right, we wouldn't share it with Renaissance yet,
But
but
we might have
we
it.
may get into the wicket with them, and they may wanna see it to proceed, so, you know, and, so I don't know that it's worth backing up at this point. To me, if the investigation were to reveal their issues, then I think we need to have a larger conversation about maybe some of those key bullet points.
Eric, what does the timetable look like on this?
Right now, they're scheduled to be here Wednesday or Thursday to perform that testing.
And I didn't get a chance to look at it till the weekend, so I didn't talk to Eric about it, so I apologize, Eric, for leaving you. And it's also, choice of law is Kansas law. Obviously, that wouldn't happen in Iowa. It has to be Iowa law by statute, so just, those are some of the things.
Yeah,
in
I
there.
think we should. I mean, unless you think it's gonna occasion major delay in the roof project, then what kind of delay would we be talking about?
Well, I mean, I can turn something this morning here if we can get it. You know, Terracon, to their credit, has never been particularly difficult to deal with. They get it.
Yeah, I
There's
just don't
a
like the-
standard set of terms that
I
they
just-
use, and
I feel like we've been getting a bit more, persnickety is maybe not the right word, but more particular about our legal requirements on things recently, and I would hate to excuse ourselves from that admonition.
Well, you could modify it to authorize me to authorize the Terracon testing subject to
I'd be more comfortable doing that, so we
Yeah, I
wouldn't have
think
to have
that,
a
I think that
special.
makes sense here, because the full intent is on this situation to to share that and use that data to provide certainty to the contractor that whatever we find, that it's adequate. And they're
So-
gonna have to feel comfortable with that at some point.
So,
The engineer at the end of the day will want to hang his hat on it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
in part anyway, and so the engineer that Mike's hired to just look at the roof structure in its entirety, you know, this is just for the fasteners and
Yeah.
so let me ask you this, Jim, we move to reconsider, we do reconsider, and then we, authorize this subject to you guys being able to work out a deal acceptable. Would that satisfy requirements?
would satisfy it for me. I think there's, you know, probably 4 items that we need to just, I don't expect that to be very difficult at all. At
In
least
that
it hasn't
case,
been
yeah.
historically.
In that case, since we still do have that on the agenda, I will move that we reconsider the vote and rescind our authorization or our approval of this contract, subject to what I just talked about, and then we'll have another motion if that passes.
Okay. So that's a motion.
Yes, sir. A motion to reconsider.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Danny we have a motion by Nathan, to reconsider, second by Danny.
And so basically what I'm saying is, we back up, we unapprove this, and then reapprove it, but only if they can reach something that's suitable to what Jim just
So
talked
the
about.
first motion is for
To
reconsider.
undo it, yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, so now we're into reconsideration of that.
Now I would move that we approve that contract, subject to the, or authorize the contract to proceed, subject to Jim and Eric being able to work out something that they deem acceptable and
On the 4 listed items.
in compliance with Iowa law.
And then, and continue with the 3,500.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. So you have that, Tybee?
If we want to talk to me later about how exactly to
So I have a motion by Nathan. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Danny. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
I appreciate it, guys.
Motion carries. Okay, anything else, Jim?
Is that enough?
Yeah, that's enough.
No, we appreciate that.
No, that's good. I like
Any
tightening
other
these things
county
up.
employees wishing to address the board this morning? How about members of the public? Do we have any members of the public wishing to address the board on items not currently listed on the agenda? Seeing no one come forward. The next item is the board is gonna go into is scheduled to go into a closed session pursuant to Code of Iowa, section 21.5C, to discuss strategy with counsel in a matter where litigation is imminent.
Take a recess, or do we want to go right?
I think we go right into closed session.
Okay.